Okay.
Good.
Good evening. It is 5:30 on the nose. We're going to start our Educational Programs and Services Committee meeting tonight because we're trying to go through at a rapid clip because it is homecoming week and we have a bonfire to get to along with many other activities. We also don't have as big of an agenda tonight because some of the data that we were waiting for to come through did not end up coming through, so it kind of was a blessing in disguise, I guess, that we've got a little bit less tonight. I'm Emily McCormick. I have JP Prego and Trina Scharschmidt. I also have Dr. Farina, Carol Giblin, Amy Coyle, and Sarah Rockmell is on Zoom. And then we've got some public and other board members in the audience, so welcome to everyone. I'll start with the approval of the September 19th meeting minutes, excuse me.
Make the motion.
I second.
All right, any questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Fantastic. All right, next up, the comprehensive plan update and feedback.
So I would like to request,
Oh, right, you wanted to move
Yeah,
things
okay.
around. I'm sorry about
I
that.
mean, if I can figure out how to get her on.
Which
She lost
one?
Sarah again.
I have her. Sarah, how do I project the Zoom?
Can you airtame and share your screen?
I think you did here.
You're sure on something?
Something was up there.
Which one are we going to do, though? Early intervention or standard based?
We're going to do standards-based report card.
Okay.
It's not showing.
I see your screen.
Well, that's great, but we can.
Just turn your computer and we can do it.
Okay, well, what we can do, oh my goodness.
Where's Jim?
He was at an AI training today, so.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let's see if we can go this direction here. Oh my heavens above. So how's the weather?
It's cold. I'm in Pittsburgh for a conference, and it's cold.
Well, Pittsburgh can be a little chilly.
I've never been to Pittsburgh before, so I'm enjoying the bridges.
All right, hold on, I'm only gonna be able to, you're just gonna have to tell me when to switch.
You're good. You're good.
7,000 clicks later.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yay.
Can you see me? I can't see it.
No, we can
No.
see the presentation though, so
Yeah.
that's, you know.
Yes,
Have to
we're on slide 1.
All right. Beautiful. So my presentation starts on slide 8, which was an overview of the standards-based report card. I did just want to let you know I've been with some folks from the IU this week at the conference. I'm at the WIDA conference, which supports language development for multi-language learners. Anyway, I've been with some folks from the IU, and they said they are still saying end of the fall, late fall for PDE for our data to be available. So hopefully it's out soon, but we were all in agreement that it is rather late, and so we're waiting on PDE. So I just wanted to give that update.
Okay.
So I will be presenting tonight on our standards-based report card, lovingly known as the SBRC. And the standards-based report card is something that we rolled out starting in K about 3 years ago. And it was a shift when we transitioned to full-day K. There was also an initiative to move this direction because we're finding in the elementary world, especially in those lower grades, reporting a standards-based measure really shows the way students progress against our learning standards. And so, as we've talked about very regularly, PDE has a prescribed list of academic standards for every content area and every grade level. And so what a standards-based system of grading allows us to do is to give families feedback on student performance based on their proficiency towards achieving that goal. It focuses on mastery of skills rather than letter grades, and it aligns with state academic standards. So on the next slide, if you want to switch, Andrea, there's some research about why a standards-based report card is so advantageous, especially at the lower elementary grades, and sort of the difference between that and fundamental traditional grading. And really, at the end of the day, it comes down to clearer communication of student progress, and it also promotes a growth mindset in learning. It helps parents, families, teachers, students identify areas for improvement, And it allows for more individualization of instruction, and then ultimately it provides a nice alignment between our curriculum and our assessment. So if you think back to your report cards, and let's say, I'll share a personal tale. So I took geometry in middle school, and this still haunts me to this day. I took geometry in middle school, and I could not for the life of me solve proofs. The proofs were impossible, if any of you guys remember doing those. And I remember I got a C on my report card. And my mother was so angry with me that she made me go to my teacher the next day and apologize to him and tell him how I was going to do better. But when I reflect back on that, the C didn't mean anything. My mom saw it as a negative mark on my report card. There was no growth mindset. I did not have any desire to get better because I didn't know. All I knew is I couldn't do proofs. So had I been graded in a standards-based way or given different feedback based on the academic standards, I would have had a very clear idea of how I could have gotten better, and I might have been more motivated to push myself in that class because of the way that grading communicates to parents. The other thing is we sit in parent-teacher conferences all the time, and the question comes up: how can I best support my student? I see they have an A in Lit and ELA. Well, that's great, but that doesn't always give the full picture of where students can continue to grow and where they can continue to develop their skills. So that's really the basis of why a standards-based report card is so effective. Now I'm going to show you some components of the standards-based report card so you can see what it looks like and how it might differ from what we're used to. So Dr. Farina, yep, you're on slide.
I'm doing great over here.
You are so good, I'm so proud. So the first thing you'll see is the academic achievement key and performance indicators. So instead of your traditional A, B, C, D, F, students are now scored secure, progressing, beginning, or not evident. And when I tell you, we debated a lot of these words, we really did, because we wanted it to be a reflection of student growth and student progress towards mastery of the academic standards. So secure just means that students have demonstrated consistent proficiency of the skill at grade level and or is consistently exceeding grade level expectations. Progressing is that they're working towards proficiency with steady progress. Beginning is they are just beginning to develop that skill. They do require some additional supports, but they're starting to get there. And then not evident is just that we have not seen progress in that way. I will tell you that most of our students will live in progressing, and that's where we want them to be, at least till the end of the academic year. Because the academic standards are end of school year expectations and goals, and so it stands to reason then that students likely aren't secure until we get to that end point of the school year.
Sarah, can I just interject one thing? I think that's, as we move up, K, 1, 2, 3, through 4th and 5th grade, that was a shift. You're reporting on the end of the year. We used to have benchmarks along the way, and so that's a little bit of a philosophical and a pedagogical sort of shift to say, if the goal is counting to 100, we're going to tell you where you are compared to that goal in the first trimester, in the second trimester, and then at the end of the year. We used to say, well, in the first trimester, we'll see if you can count to 50. Second, 75, and then did you hit the goal at the end? So, that's a different conversation, and living and progressing may not feel great to parents all the time. Well, what do you mean? When are they ever going to get there? And so that's the kind of conversation we want to have with families. Sorry, Sarah, go ahead. I'll flip.
That's exactly right. And so what our report cards too, and part of the communication, you might see this a little bit later, is some standards aren't hit in certain academic periods, or they're not hit to mastery. So to go back to Dr. Farina's example just then, in the first trimester, students may only be taught to count to 50. And so have they mastered the counting to 50? Yes. But if the standard is counting to 100, they're still progressing in that skill. So what it does is it shows the growth of the learning progression, and it also shows how students are going on their path. So it is a fundamental shift, it's a mindset shift, but it's one that we find is much more effective in communicating student progress. Slide 12 then, you'll see under core subjects, I hope it's not too small. We've now broken down, so instead of on the report card just saying math, the report card now includes the standards and just some qualifiers underneath that standard to show what students are working on. So one of those says, extend the counting sequence to read and write numerals to represent objects. That's what they're specifically doing in that academic standard. So again, providing parents and families and students more information on what they absolutely have to be able to do by the end of their grade level to show mastery. The other component that switched
Hold
a
on,
little
Sarah, there's a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Hi Sarah, it's JP.
Hey, JP.
So I'm looking at the example we have here with the math, and this person's obviously doing an excellent job. They're securing everything already. Is that almost, I don't want to say negative, but is this pointing more towards this person figured out this skill, was able to pick it up before they were expected to, therefore we can further push them, and maybe they're an a candidate for an accelerated program?
So exactly that. So when we look at the report card, it's showing us reporting on end of grade level expectations. So if we see a student like this who is consistently secure, and they're consistently secure early on in the year, that's evidence for the teacher to be able to add some opportunities for enrichment. And so previously when I talked about some of the benefits of standards-based reporting is it gives us some specific areas where we can provide more individualized instruction. So this student's clearly got the, numbers, basic numeracy mastered. We might be able to move this student up to some more computation activities. And so teachers can specifically see that because they're getting into the nitty and the gritty of the academic standards, and so they're able to push students forward.
And I would say that part of the work in transitioning to standards-based report card is to know what skills came before and
Yes.
know how these skills are applied after. And so in Pennsylvania, they call them the learning progressions. And so, we talk about this work all the time. We actually have this very conversation when we look at middle and high school data. Because sometimes when we talk about what came before, kids are deficit in that. And so, but the same applies to enrichment.
And how is it then reflected on there that this student was pushed more?
It would be narrative,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
And is there room for that on this standard-based report card? Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
I skipped to qualities of a learner.
All right, very good. So qualities of the learner then are your, they're standard on report card. There's always some kind of behavioral qualifications and ratings on any report card. And so the same goes for a standards-based report card. And we were very intentional about the things that we put on for skills for success as well. Because when we think about qualities of a learner, we think about those things that help students to be successful academically, socially, and behaviorally throughout their school day. And so all of the things on here are indicators of that. So, working well independently, having a cooperative attitude, all of those things we believe lead to skills for success. Now you'll see the rating scale on here is a little bit different. And that's just because, as we set these expectations, we have a little bit of a different qualifier. So a 3 is that these students meet expectations. 2 is that they're approaching them, so they might need some consistent teacher support and guidance to be able to do some of those things. And then 1 is their beginning. They're often inconsistent, even with support and guidance. So those would be areas that we're working on. And so again, a nice way to report specific behaviors to parents as it relates to those things that make them academically successful. So this next chart on 14, Andrea, you're there, perfect, is the development process. And so this might be hard to read, I apologize for that. I will, when we get these slides out to you, you'll be able to see a little bit bigger. So we start with some alignment and modification of assessments and curriculum. So when you start reporting in a standards-based fashion, it becomes critical that the next step is that the assessments that you're using to get that information are standards aligned. So the work of our standards-based report card committee was to start first looking at our assessments. And one thing we learned was that some of our assessments were not as aligned to the standards as we had hoped that they would be or as we thought they were. So they've done a lot of work to make revisions on those assessments and modifications. And then when you modify the assessments, your instruction changes as well. So we've had to make curricular adjustments as well, shifting some things around in pacing, maybe going a little deeper on some topics here or moving something there. And so that's that first work to really make sure our alignment is spot on and any modifications that are needed are made. So we've utilized our current resources to do this and to build this. Then we go into Skyward. And we actually build the report card. So Skyward has a couple different templates for us, but we found that for our needs and for our very specific narratives, we had to build something from scratch. I have learned a lot about coding. I'm pretty proud of myself, but we have built a standards-based report card in Skyward to be completely new and unique to Upper Perk. Then we train the teachers. So obviously our teachers need to feel well-versed and equipped to be able to teach in, to a standards-based system and to communicate in a way that is aligned to the academic standards. So we do a lot of work with our teachers and PLCs on PD days, on the changes and modifications that have been made to the assessments, to the curriculum, and to the overall alignment. And then a lot is done too to train them on how to report to these academic standards. I can remember, to go back to that sort of mindset shift, one of the teachers said, I really have a hard time saying the student is beginning on a skill when they mastered everything I've taught them so far. And so it's just a mindset shift, and that all comes part of teacher training. And then last but certainly not least is parent communication. We were very intentional with starting with standards-based report card at the beginning of full day K. And so those students who started with us in full day K have had a standards-based report card all the way through. And so they're very used to this process. But before every report card goes home, the principals, Mr. Fries and Mrs. Stevens, will send home communication, really trying to acquaint our parents with this report card because it does look different than anything we ever received when we were in school. And to give some talking points and here are some questions you can ask your teacher. Here are some things that you can talk with your student about. And so that information is really important for parents as well, so they feel equipped to understand how their students are performing. And I don't know why I have that in there twice. I apologize. We can skip to the next one. So just some more benefits of the standards-based report card. For teachers, it really does a nice job aligning their instruction with their assessments. We get some nice deep, rich data for targeted interventions. Just to go back to your question, JP. So we've got some very targeted opportunities to intervene with students to either enrich them or to remediate them or just extend their learning. It allows for more meaningful parent-teacher conferences. It encourages more reflective teaching practices, and it also supports differentiated instruction, which we know is critical for student success. And then for families, it provides a more detailed picture of their child's progress and it allows for a clearer understanding of the grade level expectations. It helps them to identify ways to support learning at home, and it can actually reduce anxiety about traditional letter grades. It encourages focus on skill development and growth rather than the A, B, C, D, F that can sometimes be, anxiety-inducing and really take on a more deficit mindset. We have a ton of information available. Like I mentioned, our principals push things out. We have a whole standards-based report card page on the website. Information comes out of Parent-Teacher or on Parent Square. And then additionally, parent-teacher conferences are a great opportunity to learn more about student progress. So that's standards-based reporting in a nutshell. I feel like I'm talking really quickly. So please feel free, does anyone have any questions or anything I can clarify?
Yeah, my question was around the communication between to parents and things like that, and you answered that, so thank you for that.
And I think we're continuously rolling it out, so we try to annually remind people, because now third grade and then fourth and fifth grade, and there is a shift in fourth and fifth grade, honestly, because sometimes in fifth grade they're asking questions about, are we getting letter grades? We should still be getting letter grades. There is a secondary shift, and a question I also hear is, are we moving this into the middle and high school? And the answer is no.
So we have it right now, K through
Well, we have K-1, 2.
Okay.
K-1, 2.
And then-
Third is in development, and then 4, 5 will be to follow next year. And there's gonna be, there's plans in the works for a lot of conversations to really beef up our opportunities to have conversations specifically at the transitional grades, and between 5 and 6, because when our 6th grade teachers, you know, get our rising 6th graders, they want to make sure that when they're looking at report card grades and they're looking at student progress, they also understand a standards-based system. Though they're grading in a traditional framework, it's important for them to know where their students are coming from. So that professional development is ongoing as well.
The other piece I want to share is this committee looks at resource adoption through the Curriculum and Instruction Department, which also poses another challenge to standards-based reporting, because all of those resources are mapped to the skills that are taught and assessed within typically the resource or supplemental to the resource. And so anytime we adopt a new resource, the team has to ask themselves, what's happening? Do we have to go back and look at how we're reporting those, indicators? What are we using as evidence that students are on that continuum towards secure? And so right now, and when Trina asked about professional development, you'll see, because of science, we have to devote professional development time to standards-based report card. So anytime, you'll be looking through math, we're talking about a math adoption. Mrs. Bast and Sarah shared that last spring. If we adopt a new resource, we have to circle back and do that work. So it almost never ends. Rolling it out and communicating it to parents is one thing. Making sure it's continuously viable and challenging is a totally different thing when we're adopting resources. So I just say that because it'll feel like, geez, why are they always working on this?
Yeah, well, like your materials are getting, give the kid an ABCD here, and you're like, oh, wait, we don't do that.
Right?
So I kind of get that.
Yeah.
Are you guys confirmed that you're doing this through 5th, did you say? Is that confirmed?
So we have not discussed anything beyond 5th grade. So, I believe, and I'll turn to Sarah, but in my seat, we only talked about K to 5.
Okay.
Yeah, at this time, we're just looking to keep this K to 5. There are some other, implications when you move up into the secondary level, and it's not always a best practice to grade in a standards-based system at the secondary level.
Yeah.
That being said,
That feels right.
they are still driven by academic standards, and so those teachers do still have a very strong understanding of the end of grade level academic standards. So that is still part of what drives our discussions and our instruction, and we do still assess the students to the academic standards. We're just not reporting it out that way.
Okay. I'm not trying to weigh in necessarily, but for like 4 and 5, I would kind of question a little more whether this would work. I mean, I'm not trying to like knock it out, but I K through 3, I'm good with it. But 4 or 5, I'm kind of like, I don't know. But maybe that's just my traditional side, my brain that's like, I want A, B, C, D, F.
I don't think so, because I was an elementary and middle school principal, and we rolled out standards-based reporting K to 5, and I'll tell you where I saw the most, and I was elementary, then moved to middle school as an administrator. There is a leap in 6th grade that happens, and it is numeric. There are, assessments. There are kids in middle school taking high school courses. There is a paradigm shift that happens at the middle level, and I think, in 5th grade, I think we have to honor that shift is going to happen, because it can be really jarring for kids if they've only ever received, and then all of a sudden, they're getting like, here's your percentage, and they're
Yeah.
Now, I think the message is always, the trust is in the teacher to communicate what the strengths or weaknesses of that grade are. Here's the things you could do, here's the things you couldn't do. Let's work on that, which is the same principle of standards-based report card, but Yeah, I think late intermediate it still gets a little dicey if we're, equipping them with the mental readiness to get a grade. Because that definitely happens.
Yeah. All right, anything else? No? Thank you very much, Sarah. I appreciate the presentation and the explanation.
Of course, no problem.
Enjoy Pittsburgh.
Happy to provide.
Enjoy Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Careful on the bridge.
Thanks, yeah, I go home tomorrow, but it's been fun, lots of good learning.
All right, stay warm.
I'll try my best.
Bye.
Which one did you want to go to next? Did you want to start with 2, or you just want to keep working your way back
spin
to
the
the top?
wheel.
Yeah.
Why don't we work our way back?
Okay, so early intervention, timeline, and process.
So in the spring, I think I presented to you guys sort of like the aftermath of our transition meetings, preparing our students to transition to kindergarten. So we're back at the beginning of the cycle this year for our kindergartners who will start next year. So currently we have 32 children, Upper Perk children, identified as receiving early intervention services. That will fluctuate due to new identifications, which happens even in the summertime. And then we typically would have 6 transition meetings per year, which is, they're already scheduled, 2 in December, 2 in January, 2 in February. And then last year, and again this year, we will have our registration team. So Jen Malone and Crystal Bittner will be on site at those meetings so that we can sort of guide parents to them after meetings so that they can start the registration process, which is vital for us because we can't do anything until a parent registers their child, meaning we can't reevaluate them, we can't do anything. And the goal is to be able to reevaluate as many early intervention children as possible prior to their kindergarten year, because we want to make sure that for students who qualify, we're writing a district IEP, we're not adopting an early intervention IEP, which we do have to do at times, and we had to do a lot this year because of registration. To make sure that it's a smooth transition for kindergartners. And then also through the reevaluation process, sometimes children won't qualify for special education with a school-age disability. So then, if we know that prior to the school year starting, then our special education resources aren't sort of having to be used for students who really don't have special education needs. We just haven't had the opportunity to reevaluate them. So this is where we're at now. I will certainly follow up with you guys in the spring at one of our meetings to sort of share with you where we're at in terms of, what we're looking at for kindergarten.
And I think it's important we always share this because the enrollment of our early intervention students, you see it starts in December for the following year, but we project our budget and our enrollment into those classes that have size limitations based on caseloads, based on what we think they might be eligible for because we haven't been able to assess them for school age. So it's a challenge for us, but you'll hear us talk about it again during budget development time. So we always want you to know this is 32 students, presuming if they were all eligible to come into kindergarten.
And that's not knowing, what types of disabilities that they may have and what type of needs that they may have. The good news for us through the IU this year, we will be able to have access to their special education documents much earlier than we have been able to in the past, which will help us because we have to do a very thorough look at those documents in preparation for a reevaluation, and also to look at programming. Are they in an autistic support program through early intervention, and will they need that type of programming when they transition to kindergarten?
Is 32 average, high, low? compared-
That's typically what comes in for us, but I mean, it fluctuates.
But the one important thing with that is a large percentage of those typically, or a higher percentage, are speech-only kids, which is a very common disability for kids in early intervention to get. So, and that's probably the only area too that Amy sometimes will talk with the speech therapist for the ones coming in as speech-only. we may look at their early intervention records and their dates, because you know how fast kids grow in that area if they're a speech only. So if we're gonna evaluate them in a, I don't know, May 15th or something, from May until August, that's 3 months, there's a lot of growth in that area. So
And there's-
sometimes for those kids, she'll look at the timelines and say, we may bring that in, because if you go, like you said, if your meeting is in February transition and they come in September, that's 6 months
And
right there.
That's a great point that Carol's bringing up, because some of the meetings are in December, so that's 9 months before they start school.
Yeah.
So things do change, the numbers do fluctuate. We do get students with a disability category of developmental delay, which is an early intervention disability category. It is not a school-aged disability. So we have to reevaluate those students that come in to determine whether or not they meet the criteria for a school-aged disability category, or if they are students that may end up as speech language impairment or don't need special education at all and don't qualify, which does happen, so.
And those ones are critical that our psychologists know they must, because if it is, they won't be included in our child count numbers, which means there will be no funding or money if those kids, and if they're going to end up qualifying with a school-age disability, then why in the world wouldn't we have? So they're a very big priority, our developmental delay kids, that they are evaluated prior to that. So if they do qualify with school age, they're counted in our numbers.
Typically, whenever we're in the spring and parents have registered their children, we look at our students with a developmental delay first, because if other students in early intervention already have a disability category that would transfer to school age, they may not necessarily be a priority unless there's concerns about programming and things like that. But Carol's right, we want to make sure, because sometimes those children end up not qualifying for special education at school age. And again, we don't want to use resources towards children who don't need them. So that's all I have to say about it.
Any other thoughts, comments,
Thank you.
questions? Good, yeah. Thank you very much. Table 8, nope, sorry, CMCI update. I didn't mean to skip you, Carol.
So we're good with CMCI. I've probably said it enough at the meeting. So this will be, we did have this past Friday on the 11th was all of the pre-work that was due to the Bureau and PDE. So that was uploaded. I'll tell you, like, overall, we printed that out. It was probably about 130, 140 pages, and that's pre-work and then uploading, so our department, like everybody working together to get those things. Now we have additional things that will all need to be done and uploaded prior to them coming on site in the middle of November. And one of the things that, so if you recall, I talked about a student survey, and these would be for our kids that are 14 and older, parent survey, and then general ed, special ed teacher, like our district teachers. So that was put out, it had to be done by the end of September. Ours was, it was completed. I just got back the end of last week, the results on what was shared by PDE, anonymous surveys that were done. So what and as we need to look at as a team, when we're sitting there and we're meeting and doing our interview with the Bureau advisor, looking at those surveys, what do we take away from it? What do we recommend in the area of what parents are saying, what the kids are saying, and then what our teachers, gen ed and special ed, are saying as well, and what can we look at to maybe make some changes and or support that more. So that's that. And then I think I'm the next one.
Oh, you are? You're table 8 too?
That's like, so table 8.
Good job, Carol.
I was pretty impressive. So table 8 is it's sort of, so if you know the requirements with special ed, there's always something every so many years, 3 years, 5 years, our plan is every 3 years, compliance monitoring. So table 8 is initial evaluation. So in special education, if somebody is a special education student, every 2 years if they have an intellectual disability, every 3 years there is a requirement with the state that they go through a reevaluation. Initial evaluations are when our school psychologists issue that permission to evaluate. That's what they look at, just those. So there is a 60-day timeline from the day that the parent So if they sign on December 1st, they agree to the evaluation, we literally have 60 days. It's a requirement by the state. The state expects 100% from every school district in the state. That's the expectation. So we
School
did.
days or calendar days, Carol?
Yeah.
No, school
No,
days.
no, it's calendar days. Is that what you're asking?
Yes,
Oh, I'm
sometimes
sorry. I
that,
was like,
people
what?
ask that question, is it school days or
No,
calendar?
it's calendar, so it's over the Christmas holiday or the holiday break, sorry.
Yeah.
The only time when it doesn't count is from the end of the school year to, well, it would be the end of the teacher school year to the start of the teachers attending. So in service week, that counts as, that's when we start the count again for that. So Upper Park received our letter, they were reviewed, and we're good there. So we'll just sort of leave it at that. But yeah, the expectation with this is 100%, that the timelines are, the expectation in Upper Perk is reevaluation or initial evaluation, it doesn't matter. They need to be done by the timeline. Questions on that?
I would just say this is, often school board members hear concerns of, community members related to evaluations and the timeliness of evaluations.
Yeah.
Those are governed by a very rigid, prescription for what we can or can't do. So the reason we share this is so they audit us on that. So, you can, just for a frame of reference, when you hear concerns like that, we have been audited and we are in compliance.
And here's what I'll say, because that's a great point Andrea brings up, as she said about parents. If I request an evaluation, or if it's up to just no matter initial evaluation or the every 3-year evaluation, I understand. And if you request it, why is it going to take over 2 months or 2 months to get this done? So, and a lot of times, would it actually take 60 days for our school psychologist to do an evaluation for, say, PEG? No, not to do all of those pieces. Sorry, I'm just using it for an example. But remember, they have a large caseload of students that they're doing. So a lot of times, if they can get it done in 35 days or 45 days, they're not waiting to the 60th day. The issue a lot of times is their caseloads that they do have. So,
Makes sense.
any questions?
Oh, my turn. So I promised that through the comprehensive planning process that I would bring back the information.
I enjoyed
that
it.
was,
That was a very enjoyable experience.
thank you.
Mhm.
So
I
I
agree
wanted
with
to
you.
share where we're
I
at.
thought it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was lovely. So I wanted to share where we're at. The goals were really to look at our current vision and try to create a cohesive vision statement. So a future thinking statement for the district. Where do we want to be over the next 3 years? It was in infographic form. We took the compilation of the 5 subgroups and tried to create a singular synthesized statement. This has gone from our stakeholder group to our professional education committee, which is representatives from all of the buildings, their leadership teams. It has gone to the high school student leadership team for feedback. And we have tried to broadly share it with other groups. So principals are meeting with students in the elementary and middle school as well to gather their feedback. Looks a little different for our younger students. But the sentence below is the proposed vision statement. We will bring this back to the group to chew up. We have 5 different renditions. And so it is lengthy and ambitious.
So why we gotta get into one sentence, that's why.
Yeah, that's what people said, and all of it was important. So I will share that. Now, of course, this will go to the whole community at some point. A portrait of the graduate is the other thing that our committee originally was working on. These came from 2 different data sets. The vision was from the purpose question of our parent teacher-student surveys that we sent out in the spring and in early fall. And then this is the skills question, where our parents and our students and our staff, or our parents and our staff were asked, what are the 4 essential skills kids need in order to graduate? So the groups at our stakeholder meeting dissected the data, and I can give you a quick, picture walk of that. And this is the proposed portrait. Now, you haven't seen it in info form. We had it in all words,
Yeah.
so I turned it over to Alexis and said, do your
Make this
thing.
beautiful.
Let's
With
see.
your magic wand.
And so this is the initial rendition of the portrait of a graduate. Now, we took it to PEC, the Professional Ed Committee, and so they had, it was academic preparedness, but they felt like it had to be uniform, as though you're speaking about the student. So the student is an effective communicator. The student is resilient.
Yeah, good.
And so, our English teachers in the group were like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Because that resilient was resilience. And they're like, no, you were talking about
Yeah.
the person. And so there was some wordsmithing. We're at the phase now that if you flip over this sheet, we're asking, people felt in our stakeholder group, being able to describe those attributes with skills was really important. And so we've sent out to our teacher leadership teams, to our building leadership teams, to our student leadership teams, what does this mean to you? What are the characteristics essentially that live under being an effective communicator? And one of the things we thought is this is all student-centered. At some point, we want to ask the question, if I'm a teacher, what do I do to help build kids' effective communication? So that's aspirational, and so we're just trying to right now get some characteristics under those descriptors in order to create a more comprehensive portrait of a graduate. The stake, so on November 11th, we'll come back. The other thing is, we feel like we need a little tagline too, like something really catchy. Definitely is not a gift of mine.
Did you contact ChatGPT?
Honestly, Colby Phillips like, why don't we just ask ChatGPT?
Yeah.
I'm thinking, we did not. These were the ideas that were generated. Frank met with the high school students Friday of last week, and we have not connected because he's worried about, this big homecoming week.
Yep.
But he said, I've got some feedback. And so I'm like, I'm sure you do. So what we will bring back to the stakeholder group.
I like empower, innovate, grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, not that Proud to be UPSD isn't great, but, we were trying to say like, what is it? Taglines are really industry, they're forward facing. They make you feel something. So these were some that we threw up there. We don't have the students yet. And so now what happens in our next meeting, November 11th, here at the Ed Center, we keep it pretty, we stick to our time,
Yep.
5 to 6:30, we promise. But really we want to look at final recommendations. How do we put something together? We want to look at data from the perspective of, so if this is what we say we aspire to be as a school district, and this is what we want students to embody when they graduate, what does the data tell us of how close we are to that? So we will unpack the student and parent data and staff data by groups in our next meeting to say, well, where are we close? Where do we need to grow? What would the goals of this next plan be in order to achieve the vision and the portrait of a graduate? And then what kind of professional development or resources would we need?
And these are those stakeholder meetings, I missed the last one.
Yeah.
You've got 3 planned?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, so
All right.
on Tuesday, I decided I'm coming here to share this broadly, but on Tuesday, an email will go out to the whole group with all of this information as well, just to think about the characteristics before we, before we meet again. And then, to try and pull that work together. So, we're really trying to get that broad involvement, and then, we don't meet again until after the new year, and February, and it's not due till March, so we want to put something together. What do those goals really mean? What are the action steps? What do we as a district need to commit to do in order to get to achieving those goals? And how do we measure them? I mean, all of that is going to be part of the conversation. So I just wanted to share where we're at with that. It was fun work. There wasn't a minute unused, I don't think, in that stakeholder.
Good, well done.
And so, you don't need to see that again? Sorry, Amy. So that's where we are. Are there any questions?
No, I'm excited for that, because it's moving in the right direction.
So the reason that is important, and I say because we develop our professional development objectives from our comprehensive plan. So in an email, I was asked to give sort of a picture of professional development, which is great because it is the outgrowth of our comprehensive plan. Or something like standards-based report card, which is essentially one of our initiatives. So here's how we have traditionally outlined our professional development. We have a calendar which you adopt every spring. Within those calendar, we have our professional development days. We have always historically tried to say, what did we commit to in the comprehensive plan that would push out a district initiative, essentially, or district training? What do principals and teachers need? And then we provide a professional development survey to staff every spring to ask them for their feedback. And so now these days have all gone, but essentially you can see sometimes our smaller groups or smaller groups of students specialized have staff have different professional development than all of our teachers. And so you will see on the 20th of September, we had Mission Kids. Child exploitation is a requirement under Act 71. So Mission Kids came out and did Stewards of Hope and recognizing commercial sex exploitation of youth, which is every school district in Pennsylvania is required to deliver that. So we do that. Data days are something that we give whole days of professional development to. We work collaboratively, special ed, pupil services, curriculum instruction with our building administrators. It is all around data. They review beginning of the year data, they design instruction, they decide on what students need intervention and enrichment, so that's that day. The 18th, which is coming up, is tomorrow. Act 55 is also a requirement, and so incident response is part of what school districts are required to deliver. So the morning is Act 55, situational awareness, where all of our buildings will be practicing incident response, the use of crisis go, and reunification. So if you have a parent at Hereford, you've been inundated with emails saying, you're going to get this notice, you're going to get this notice, because we've actually invited students and parents to that reunification. All our other buildings have mock students and parents. So we'll be working through that in the morning. In the afternoon, we have a belonging training. We did a belonging training for our secondary staff in the spring. This is our elementary training, and then there are some TLS, which is part of our comprehensive plan on designing responsive instruction. We partner with TLS through our federal grant money, so their coaches will be out with our teams to look at lesson design and data.
What are the two columns that, like, what is it? The blue, what's in the blue? I can't.
Oh, this up above?
Yeah, what, I think I saw.
That's the Mission Kids training. So Stewards of Hope.
I was more looking what the K.
Yeah, it's weird. It goes
Okay.
across, so K3, 4,
Got
5, 6, 8. I know. I don't
Could you make
like-
it smaller next time?
Yeah, listen, in my defense,
Sit closer.
I actually didn't produce this. Can you believe it? Even though it's an Arial narrow and 11 font, I didn't. I can make it bigger.
You sure can. There you go.
Oh, look at that.
There you go.
Sorry. November 5th, this is where I talked, you will see our K to 5, they are working on science curriculum rollout, and they're talking about standards-based reporting. Our counselors and social workers are visiting crisis centers. That's part of their professional development. And then if you look at our secondary, TLS is back in the morning. And then in the afternoon, they're working on project-based learning for teachers at the teacher level following TLS. And then at the high school, they're doing assessment training. So when we talked about elementary, making sure our assessments are standards aligned and rigorous, that is work the high school still needs to do. And so Mr. Flanagan is very committed to that assessment literacy training and making sure it's embedded in our professional development calendar.
He's getting it from SAS?
So he's using some, the assessment tools in
Yeah.
SAS?
Yeah.
Yes. So we talked about how are we teaching teachers to review their own assessments, making sure they're rigorous, making sure the DOK level of questions, they have rigor. And so he's really committed to that because right now, that work, so when I was in curriculum, we did that work for 2 years when Allie and I were there. It's been on hiatus for TLS to be in there, but I think we need to revisit it because we want to make sure that those assessments are really assessing the standards at their level of rigor.
TLS doesn't
Teaching.
address it?
It does, but I think it assumes it. It assumes that those assessments are already rigorous and aligned, and I don't know if that's a fair assumption. And, well, in fact, it's not a fair assumption. Okay, so November 22nd, you'll see we're still working standards-based report card at elementary. They're preparing for their conferences. They actually have lots of parent visitors for conferences. Secondary, not so much. And so TLS is back. We also have, it's a magical time of year where we have to do PASA and PSSA and Keystone training, so you'll see that. And then we have conferences.
What is SMARTS?
So it's a program to support executive functioning. So our special ed.
Training.
Special ed.
No, not
Well,
just
and-
special ed, but it is used as an intervention for special ed.
Parent-teacher conferences are on there. And then December 20th, we will be finalizing those agendas. So based on the progress through the beginning of the year, we will work with principals to develop. Probably, if I had to guess, it's going to be more assessment once they're done their Keystone training at the high school. And project-based learning or standards-aligned learning in middle school. And right now, the 20th is up in the air for elementary because we just need to see how far we get in mapping out those resources for science as they roll them out. This is their first year, so they have to still unpack all of that. So, but I can bring that back. I said, we're kind of ready to get to December.
Okay.
And then I can just show you a quick, there's some big ideas. Amplify, that is, they're bringing the trainer back because we're about mid-year at that point. February 14th is our next data. So our benchmarks, our mid-year benchmarks are all of, January. And so that's a sweet spot for them to say what kind of progress have kids been making from the beginning of the year to mid-year. March, because there's a little bit of a distance, we typically work on transition meetings. This is when we start talking and projecting up. This is when, consideration for accelerated coursework, honors, all of those conversations start to happen. We embed our PSSA training before PSSAs. And so that day is typically, because it's only a 3-hour, and by 3 hours, it's really 2.5 after you. May 9th is culturally responsive and sustaining educational competencies. The state of Pennsylvania rolled out competencies. There are 8 competencies around cultural relevance and responsiveness. And so it's embedded in our induction plan because it's required to be. And so we started training with this first induction class on the CRSEs. Essentially, we're looking at ones, what we focused on in induction was competency 1, which is understanding your own cultural lens, who you are, what you bring to the table as a person. And so this is our first introduction, although I can tell you, most professional development, even including data, ties back to a competency. So, I'm happy to share more when we get those trainings together. May 20th, we always commit to Special Olympics. We do our own, it is a point of pride, and so we marry that to building level because the excitement ramps up, and then we let the principals deal with the fall.
After.
And then we're at the end of the year. So typically, this is what our professional development, we spend a lot of time talking with principals about what their building needs. And so we will have administered the professional ed survey by then. Hopefully, we will have a comprehensive plan, well, we will, because it's due in March, that we will start talking about how much time do we need to embed in our calendar, and what professional development are we doing.
Looks good, thank you. Are you able to share that with me? or-
Sure.
Okay.
I'm going to put it in the board, Alan asked me to put it in the board update.
Okay.
So
that's
I'll,
fine. Just do
I
that.
send it to him and he can,
Okay. All right, I like it. I will say a school that shall not be named, they like to have wellness days where we can do different activities. We can go pet goats. We got to, the people get to go to like a museum, stuff like that. And it is very well received and worthwhile. 1,000% boosts morale. Everybody's very pleased with those kinds of days. And then throughout the year at that school, there are different times, and it might be an hour and a half, where it's like wellness time, and you're allowed to go use the fitness center. You can take a walk. You can catch up on grading and make phone calls if that's what you want to do to make you feel like, okay, I'm caught up and I'm happy. I just wanted to mention that.
yeah, no, and I will say, not this year, but in previous school years, we have done at least twice wellness days, and so it was well received.
Do you think you could incorporate like massages?
We do.
Yeah.
We actually, some of our
Yeah, that
partners,
was-
This school, they have all options. You can go to a salt cave.
yeah, now, so here's what I was saying. We haven't let people go out, so that would be new for us.
It's organized. It's not just go
Yeah,
where
you
you
sign
want.
up,
You can play pickleball, but you have to like sign up. You meet other people there from
Yeah.
your school.
Another common one, I don't know if you've done it, where you may use the full day or half of the day, and people, your teachers, your staff, they come out and they say, so like, if I'm an instructor in yoga, I'm gonna put it out there, like, there's an hour and a half, and then you do it all day, different people can sign up. And your staff, your teachers, things that they're great at and comfortable with, they lead them, and you kind of set up an entire, like,
I would play pickleball.
Oh, you could go to the YMCA. You could swim.
Yeah.
You could whatever.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, a lot
I
of
think we
different.
could definitely, and I'm sure it would be, people would be very receptive to us doing
Oh,
it.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I just saw a notice that was like, oh, take the time you need. I'm like, oh, that is lovely.
That is lovely.
Yes.
All right. Anything else? Any public comment? Okay. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Have fun.
All right. Yeah, happy homecoming, everyone. Thank you. Good job.
Have a good night.
I'm like, this.